last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. Magical realism meets Rustbelt Buffalo in this darkly funny coming of age tale. And of course, the author of the book, The Dunbury Chronicles, none other than Mr. Timothy Schmand. Welcome, Mr. Timothy on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Well, thank you for having me, Daniel. My name is Tim Schmand, and I currently reside in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, though I was born in Buffalo, New York, and lived there for quite a portion of my life.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Mr. Tim, thank you. And today, let's talk about your book, The Chronicles Blueprint. Did you conceive the Dunbury Chronicles as a single, sprawling narrative from the beginning, or did it evolve organically from the core story of the multi layered tapestry of interwoven lives?
So I had started out with the idea of writing a story about a single football game that took place in 1969 on Thanksgiving weekend in Buffalo, New York, in a blizzard. But I realized that to create the world in which that game took place, I had to go back at least a couple days prior to the game. And the main character, Patrick Barry, presented himself to me sort of organically. I had started working from the idea of in in Buffalo and in this novel, weather is a character. So I began working with weather as a character, the neighborhood as a character, and then introduced Patrick Barry as the protagonist of the novel.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sounds
then I just followed
interesting.
him and let him lead me where he went throughout the 2 days of this book.
Sounds interesting, Mr. Tim. So, what does the term chronicles mean to you to this context? Is it about recording specific history, capturing a spirit of a place across time, or following the ripple effects of pivotal choices?
So for me, it has multiple meanings. For me, I'm documenting what took place on Danbury during these couple days, as well as charting sort of the evolution of a kid's life over these couple days that were very impactful. And of course, as a writer, we choose the moments that are most impactful. We choose the moments in which change takes place. And in the Chronicles, change takes place, change happens, events happen. People begin one way and they end up another.
So, Mr. Tim, why is Dunbury, the street or neighborhood, or the perfect crucible for the story you want to tell? What is a specific microcosm allows you to explore that a broader setting would not?
So, what I was looking at was a time in history where the industrial age in Buffalo was beginning to deteriorate. And what had once been a functioning working class neighborhood was now on the decline because the industrial structures around were declining and the jobs that were once there were no longer there. And families were put in challenging positions. And all along Danbury, the people were dealing with a change in their potential economic status. And what Patrick witnesses through his life on Danbury is the challenges that adults have, even though he doesn't quite understand what's going on. He will, I suspect, when he grows up. But at the moment, he's only witnessing this decline. So the choice of the Danbury of the street was specific to document sort of the decline of the economic impulses in Buffalo, as well as to give a sort of, I don't know what you would call a a patterned place where Patrick could live out his dreams and live out his life. A
Mm,
canvas, if you will.
a canvas. Mm.
Hmm.
Interesting, Mr. Team. So, with the multiple character threads, how do you plan and weave their arcs to ensure the reader feels the satisfying cohesion of a single story, or not just a collection of a vignette?
So for me, what happened with in the writing of the story. So when I began the story, I had no idea. So I'll just, in brief,
In brief, okay.
Patrick's reflection talks to him on a regular basis. And Patrick's reflection sometimes gives him good advice and sometimes gives him bad advice. And his reflection shows up in any number of places. Okay. When I first began writing this book, I had no idea that the reflection was going to speak. And in very early on in writing the book, Patrick's reflection shows up in a door window as he's standing outside. And Patrick says something that a kid might say to himself when he thinks he's alone. But Patrick knows he's not alone. He knows his reflection speaks to him. Patrick says something, and the reflection in the window speaks back. And that sort of propelled me forward into a whole other way to look at Patrick's life and the way that it moved. And it became just like this organic thing. He walked through the door, his life is there inside. It came to me like in a vision. Every step he took, I was with him going through the back hall into the kitchen to talk to his mother, to talk to his brother. It just flowed, sort of like a river. I found myself in a river just being propelled forward. And I hope
Prof.
that the readers are too.
Mm-hmm. Propel forward. We love that, Mr. Team. So, the book likely contains a diverse perspectives. How do you find and maintain a distinct, authentic voice of each character while ensuring the overall narrative has a consistent,
Well, so,
identifiable authorial tone?
right. So, um, I've written a lot. And in this particular instance, everybody who came into play in the novel had their own worldview, their own understanding of where they were in themselves. And those characters contained in themselves the ability to make themselves understood in their voices. So whether it's one of the neighbors or Patrick's brother or Patrick's mother or any of the children that come into play, or adults for that matter, they're all unique individuals. And as such, they have unique voices that I think well, they were speaking to me before I put them on paper or in this case, a screen.
Unique voices. Oh, I love that. I love that, Mr. Team. Managing narrative momentum across Chronicle is a unique challenge. How do you balance a deep show character emotion with forward drive that keeps render turning pages through the long work?
So for me, it's the voice of the characters. So, and by characters, so the weather is a character, the neighborhood is a character, the the environment is a character. I make them speak. I make them real. And then the individual human characters or the dog characters, because there is a funeral of a dog that is, a pretty interesting event in the book. And the dog has personality. The dog is a legend, is a celebrity in the neighborhood because he's bitten so many people. And when you have that sort of thing going on in a novel, it's quite easy to create that suspension of disbelief that this world is real, this world is true. And for the time that you're in the book, you're in that world.
So, Mr. Team, is there a character who, for you, most embodies the soul of Dunbury itself? Who are they and why do they hold that central place?
That's a great question, Daniel. Thank you. I've got to think about it because so Patrick is the protagonist. It is his story, but he lives on Danbury and cross lives walks across it. Perhaps it's his upstairs neighbor who best represents sort of Danbury. Her husband has recently died in an industrial accident. She is the landlord for Patrick, his mother, and brother. She keeps the clothing her husband wore on the day he died in the industrial accident in a box on her buffet with votive candles around it because the husband represents the last of the industrial might in Buffalo, and the husband represents a connection to greater economic times in Buffalo. And the fact that she owns this house is sort of the gift of those economic times. So if there's a character who best demonstrates what Danbury is or was, or its progress, it would be her. It would be the upstairs neighbor, Mrs. Gorski,
Mhm.
who provides a vat of soup because this takes place on Thanksgiving weekend. And she makes a vat of soup from the leftovers that resulted from the Thanksgiving meal. And she gives them to Patrick to share with the family. And that soup that they have towards the end of the book becomes the most redeeming aspect of their lives at that moment.
Redeeming aspect. Wow, we love that, Mr. Tim. Do you see the perspective of a newcomer, of our outsider to Dunbury as a device to reveal its hidden rules and rhythms to the reader? If so, what does the character see to the local Smiths?
Well, okay, so in the book, there is a newcomer to the neighborhood, and he's a kid who appears to be from Italy, except he's different. He speaks a different language than all the Italian kids in the neighborhood know how to speak. But he becomes something of a leader in the neighborhood, a a like a star in the constellation of the neighborhood, where his odd behavior becomes the focal point of certain aspects of the book. And he, uh, in many ways, becomes the cheerleader for the neighborhood. It's one of those things that you have to read the book, but he's in there. And I'm glad you asked about a newcomer because, in neighborhoods like that, they're pretty insular. And the people who are there sort of protect the boundaries. But this one guy shows up and he sort of opens their eyes to alternatives.
Open the eyes. Oh my goodness. So that'd be awesome. Awesome, Mr. Tim. And how do you show the weight of history and legacy with the families of Danbury? Are characters doomed to repeat patterns, or do they find ways to break chains and redefine their inheritance?
So the structure they live in is been the site of many families before them. And the families before them have left the marks of their existence in dents on the walls, in tapes, in holes in the walls. And for the beginning of the book, Patrick doesn't quite understand what these marks on the walls are from. And then by the end of the book, because of various incidents, he suddenly becomes aware of what they really mean and how they were there and how his family has added to that event that is described in the wall. But at the end of it all, primarily because of Irene Gorski's soup, they are able to come together and reveal themselves as like a family with all of the issues that are surrounding familial feelings.
Hmm. Familial feeling. Well, Mr. Tim, the ghost of place. Every neighborhood has its ghosts, both
Mhm.
literal and figurative. What are the unsolved past events or collective memories that haunt Dunbury as a shape the action of those who live there now?
So, in the beginning of the book, I described the neighborhood. Adjacent and across the street's asphalt strip, three-story wood frame houses lined the block. Driveway house, except 73 Danbury, the site of a decade earlier midsummer fire. The empty lot served as a reminder to the Danbury crowd of life's vagaries, as if they needed another. The, so you have right there this house, this vacant lot where a fire took place. And it was reading an article about a fire in that sort of neighborhood that propelled me into writing the book sooner than I thought I would. And I can only imagine the heartbreak of the neighborhood where this fire actually took place. And I know that that place where that house burned down and a child died would not be rebuilt for decades. And the same thing has happened on Danbury in the novel. Something horrible had happened. A perfect example of life's vagaries. And life's vagaries are what the people in the Danbury Chronicles are dealing with all the time.
So let's talk about the Chronicles community life often balance hardship with humor. How do you find and incorporate the natural character driven humor that helps a community endure?
Even in the most dire circumstances, people say funny things. In fact, the more dire the circumstances, generally the more funny the things. If not in the moment where they're said, in the time as time passes and they look back, it seems funny. And I think that the thing that the Danbury Chronicles demonstrate, or what life in general demonstrates, is that tragedy or comedy is tragedy after time has passed. And you often find things humorous in what at the time they happened were deemed as tragic.
Hmm.
And
True.
I let characters speak. And in their own conversations, you see humorous things. It's just you let them be as close to human as possible. You make them as close to human as possible. They portray themselves as close to human as possible.
So, Mr. Team, tell us, how do you approach writing about seemingly ordinary daily life on Dunbury in a way that feels epic and deeply significant to the reader?
So, what I try to do is focus on the details that make what is on the page appear as real as everything surrounding the reader. So that when you read my work, the level of detail and the interest in the physical surroundings, the um, appearance of people, the way they speak, the whole package creates a certain physicality in your head that makes people believe that what I've written is, in fact, a true event, and it is in a book, but it's fiction in a real world.
A fiction in the real world, that be outstanding, Mr. Timothy. Yes. So, when a reader finishes the final page of Dunbury Chronicles, what is the primary feeling or impression you hope stays with them about Dunbury and its people?
That it's sort of the way that Patrick views the world, right? Um, the world can be seen in more than one way, and perhaps more than two. And that when you're a child growing up under these circumstances, you get to see something one way. And then as you age, you get to see it in another. And then as you get older, as another. And that those things that we see as children inform how we are as adults, but they are completely different than we are as adults.
Yes, definitely. So, to wrap up our discussion for today, Mr. Timothy, while deeply specific, or what do you call that? Specific, or while deeply specific is in setting, every great local story also speaks universally. How do you believe is the most universal human experience readers will recognize in the very specific world of Danbury?
Well, the universality of family, for sure. That, families are a variety of different collection of people. They don't even have to be related by blood, but they can be related by impetus toward gathering. And in Danbury, the Chronicles, there are many families. Not all of them exist inside the apartment with Patrick and his mother and brother.
Interesting, Mr. Timothy. So, can you please invite our listeners to support the Danbury Chronicles?
Please, yeah, sure. If you're interested in everything that I've said about this book, you can certainly get them on Amazon.com, the Danbury
Yes.
Chronicles. And Daniel, thank you very much for your time today. It was a lot
You're
of
most
fun.
you're most welcome, Mr. Timothy. You are most welcome. Yes, people, let's support Mr. Timothy Schmand, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering Danbury Chronicles will rise. So, Mr. Timothy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Monica people, see you soon.